All right, so we're in a series right now talking about incredible faith and people from Scripture who have this examples of really stepping it up in faith. Last week, seems like it's been a year. It's been a long week. Last week, we talked about Joseph, and we looked at the genealogy of Abraham to Isaac to Jacob and his 12 sons, one of them being Joseph, that ended up, that's where the nation of Israel came from. So if you want more detail on that, jump back at our video. You can reach it from our website. It goes to our YouTube channel, and you can see that in more detail. But that's where we left off last week. Joseph was saying, all right, family, come on, move to Egypt. We had a place for you. There's a famine going on. People are hungry. People are hurting. And at the time the people moved to Egypt, there are about 70 people in the family. So this little family tree represents 70. They're having kids, and there's people, spread around. And so you have about 70 people. Over the next 350 years, the family grows so large that the Pharaoh at that time, obviously generations come and go, right? The Pharaoh at that time starts looking at this huge number and says, hey, these people are going to overpower us. We brought in these people to live with us, and they're going to outnumber us and overpower us. We better do something to make sure that doesn't happen. So he enslaves the people of Israel, these descendants of these people. Some 350 years, like I said, goes by, and now he's enslaving them. And not only that, but he wants to control the population. And so he makes this new rule that any male child that is born, they're to be thrown into the Nile River, which would be just a horrific situation, but that's where they're at right now. And in Exodus chapter 2, in your scripture, a baby is born, and the mom somehow is able to hide this child. As a baby boy, she's able to hide this child for a short time, like 3 months, and finally she's like, okay, you can't hide a little baby for long. They cry, they'll start walking at some point. I mean, not at 3 months, but at some point. So she knows she can't hide him any longer. She puts a little boy in a basket, floats him down the river, just trusting, just hoping that God would somehow save this little baby and watch out for this baby. Well, it just so happens that downstream from where she sends this basket is the Pharaoh's daughter, and she's bathing in the river. She sees the basket, has someone get it. She looks at it and says, hey, I think I'll keep it. It's a baby. Isn't this cool? And so she keeps the little baby, names him Moses. And here begins the story of a man named Moses. So he grows up as part of Pharaoh's family, obviously has access to the greatest education on the planet at that time, the greatest leadership development at that time, being part of Pharaoh's family, given every opportunity, every advantage to succeed. And he grows up and at some point realizes, he was probably watching Sesame Street, and they were singing this song, one of these things that's not like the others, and he's looking at himself and looking at his mom and going, hey, I'm the one. I'm different. Something, I don't know what it is. And he realizes at some point that he's not an Egyptian, but rather he is a Hebrew, the ones who are enslaved, the ones who are having all this harsh treatment done to them. And somewhere along the line, he decides, I can't watch this. I can't just sit back and do nothing while my people are being mistreated and they're being enslaved and they're killing babies. These awful things are happening. I've got to do something. And his first attempt to make some positive change in his culture turns out really to be a really big fail. I mean, like a major fail in his life. Because at this point, God's really not in his life. He's probably following the gods of the Egyptians. That's how he was raised. He was raised in Pharaoh's house, right? And God's not really in his life, so there's no real faith going on. He's not doing this necessarily out of his faith in God. We don't think, it doesn't really say, or his faithfulness to God. So in the celebration of school being out for the summer, we made a math equation out of this. And Moses minus faith equals 0 is what I'm going with this. It's a story problem. Moses, when he didn't engage his faith, he just really fumbles things and causes some issues. Exodus chapter 2, verse 11. One day Moses had grown up. He went out to his people, looked at their burdens. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, and he says, I can fix this. I can take care of this, right? He looked this way and that, nobody's watching, and seeing no one, he struck down the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. So he kills somebody. He's thinking, this is the solution right here. I will save my people. I don't know, is he going to go one at a time through the whole Egyptian? I don't know what his plan is. I don't know if he was thinking that far ahead. He just acted in the moment. Rather than going to God in prayer, rather than saying, okay, God, how do we handle this? God, there's some great, terrible things. What do I do? Instead of seeking God's will for the situation, he responds emotionally. He responds physically to the situation and ends up hurting people, right? I mean, killing him. And it just causes a ripple effect of problems. Look what happens next. In the next verse, verse 13. When he went out the next day, behold, two Hebrews are struggling together, and he said to them, he's like, oh, I can fix this too. I can fix everything, right? And he says to the man in the wrong, why do you strike your companion? And he answered, well, who made you prince and judge over us? That's from Moses, because I had my mom. I mean, he could have said that, but anyway, that's editing. Do you mean to kill me as you killed the Egyptian? Whoa, okay, no one's supposed to know about that. I mean, he thought he was pretty slick. Moses was afraid and thought, surely this thing's known. And then the Pharaoh here, I mean, they're skipping a bunch of stuff here, but Pharaoh heard about it. He sought to kill Moses, but Moses fled from Pharaoh, stayed in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. Here's my thought about this. If you're trying to make changes in your life, whether it's in your own life, whether it's you're in a work environment, you're thinking, man, there's some things going on that really should change, whether it's your neighborhood, a culture at large, your marriage, whatever it is, if you do not include God in your plans, okay, if you're just trying to bulldoze it through or make it happen or just force it, whatever, try to do it completely on your own power, ultimately, I'd say you're destined to fail. I mean, you might see some success here and there, but I mean, ultimately it's going to come back to bite you. Moses fails so miserably that he's now on the run for his life. He's got to leave his home, leave his country, go to a completely strange place, and reinvent his life. Now, let me suggest that God has some plan for your life. Okay, I really believe that. I mean, none of us are Moses, right? I don't know if he's going to call you specifically to do some monster thing, but I believe he calls us all to do something. Whether it's in the generality, hey, we're all called to make disciples. We're all called to reach the people around us. There's certain things we're all called to do, right? So you're part of that plan, and he may from time to time say, and by the way, I want you to do something specific, whatever that may. Teach a class. Do something. Talk to someone in your workspace about Jesus. He calls us to do something in life, that God has a reason for you beyond just going to work and coming home and raising kids, and that's raising the kids is a big part of it too, but he has a reason, he has something for you to do. The biggest mistake you can make, and I see this a lot, is trying to do this life without God. The biggest mistake is not letting God lead you in what you're doing, in the ways you're trying to make change, and the ways you're trying to make a difference in life. And the choices you make on your own tend to lead to dead-end roads. The answers that you look for that don't include God tend to lead to trouble and roadblocks and misfortune. It just does. It's just kind of the way it works. The best road for you to travel, and for all of us to travel, is this road that includes a relationship with God and continual reading of His Word so we understand He's the designer. He's the one. He knows, right? That's always the best way to go. Always the best way to go. So Moses is running for his life. He ends up at a well, which would make sense. I mean, you get thirsty, you go to the well, and so he's hanging out there. He meets 7 women who are there, who are shepherds. Some other shepherds show up, and they're causing problems for the women, and we don't know exactly what's happening, but it's causing some trouble. Moses jumps in, rescues the women. The father of the women is so impressed, they said, hey, Moses, what are you doing with your life? You need a job? Which obviously he does. He's left home. He doesn't know what he can do next. So he offers Moses a job, and also one of his daughters say, hey, you probably need a wife too. How about this one? That happens in chapter 2 of Exodus, verse 21. Moses was content to dwell with the man. He gave Moses his daughter Zipporah. She gave birth to a son, and he called his name Gershom, for he said, I've been a sojourner in a foreign land. Now, what often happens, and it happens to all of us, is when, most of us can talk about mistakes we've made in life, times we've maybe, I'll just say it, times we've been zeros. I did this without faith, I made this move, and I should have really looked more at what God had to say about it. And so we've been zeros. But whenever we do that, he tends to give us opportunity to learn. We can learn from our mistakes, we can learn from our pain, we can learn from situations. And what he does with Moses now is he gives us an opportunity to learn some really valuable lessons about life and about leadership and about this amazing task he's going to have for Moses later on. The people are suffering back in Egypt, and God puts Moses on this 40-year learning curve. Right? He's gone from prince to now he's a shepherd of sheep. He's learning humility. You don't learn I can't even say it. You don't learn humility overnight, right? You don't just like have a Bible study on humility and say, oh, okay, I'll do that now. I'll be really good at it. It takes time to truly develop that as part of your character. He's learning how to serve. He's been served his whole life, and now he's going to, he's got to learn how to serve other people now. He's learning how to lead as a shepherd as opposed to an overlord, which is what he's been. He's been a prince. He's been a part of the royalty, and now he's going to learn to lead as a shepherd, which is a completely different way of doing things. And so God gives him 40 years of tending sheep. Moses assumed that's just his life. That's just how he's going to end us. That's just what I am now. I'm a shepherd. But God's really teaching him. With every lamb that Moses helps give birth to, that he assists the lambs with every lost sheep that he chases after and protects and rescues, with every green pasture that he takes the flock to so that they can feed and eat and be safe and feel secure, God is preparing Moses for something bigger than what he was a part of. Now, again, I don't know what God has in store for you. I think he has something. He has some plan for you. He has some goal for you. But I'm 100% sure, okay? I mean, I may not know what he has for you, but I'm 100% positive that God is preparing you for something. He's always preparing us for something that he wants to use us for, some area of service, some area of kingdom life. I mean, just the thought that you're here today, I think is something, right? God, we're a unique, every week it's a different group, a different service, a different collection of people, right? You're here today, right now, hearing about Moses. I wonder how many of us, if someone had told us 5 years ago, just 5 years ago, just maybe 2 years ago, that you're going to be sitting in a church Memorial Day weekend hearing about Moses, you'd be like, right. It's like that's the last place you would be. But we have several in our church that are that are there. Right? You're here today because God has you here learning about Moses. You would have laughed at me if I'd said that 5 years ago. Maybe it's a cosmic accident. You just happen to show up. I don't know. Or maybe God's preparing you for something significant in his kingdom. I don't know. I was talking to my friend Ben the other day, last Monday. We were talking, and he came to Pathway a number of years ago, and we were looking for a bass player, and he played bass. And he's like, "Hey, you want to play bass?" Okay. He came purely to play. That was all he cared about. Let's just play bass. And he started getting involved in the life, the church life, and you start recognizing gifts or something, and pretty soon he's leading a small group, and before you know it, he's teaching classes, and then he's preaching once in a while here and there, and he just kept growing in his passion for the kingdom. And then it was like, hey, I'm going to this church planning conference. You should come with me. And I brought him to a couple of church planning conferences. We had tons of conversations about what it would look like to start the next campus or the next church. And we've always said we'll be a church planning church, right? And we had tons of conversations about that. And before you know it, a guy who totally wasn't expecting it, he looked at what God had been preparing him in his time here, and he said, God wants me to plant a church, And so he went off and planted a church a couple of years ago, and they're doing great, and he's doing great, and it was just fun talking to him the other day. We see each other every week, but it was fun talking to him and just saying, it wouldn't have happened had God not brought us here and had those opportunities, and he had been molded in a certain way to get these things done. It never would have happened. I mean, it just wouldn't have. God had prepared him through his time here to do something for the kingdom that's blessing some people that we couldn't reach. It's a positive thing. God is using them in some way. We have a group of people in just a few weeks headed to Zimbabwe, and they're just us. They're just us. Well, there's 8 from our church and 2 from another church that partner that's coming with us because they're going to probably take a group in the future too. And we're just going to tell some people about Jesus, We're looking at, we're just doing this thing, but it's like, how big this is. This is a copy of our little promotional thing that's going around in Zimbabwe. We're doing this theme, Hi, my name is Jesus, or Hello, my name is Jesus, and we're going to have a vacation Bible school for some kids there in Zimbabwe. We're going to do a youth rally for the kids and for teens in Zimbabwe. We're going to do an adult revival while we're there. This is like just the first few days that we're there. And it's just, I'm friends with the preacher we're going to on Facebook, so social media. It was cool to see him share this on his Facebook page, and he's telling people about these missionaries that are coming from America to tell us about Jesus. And it was just kind of like, whoa, that's us. We're just kind of us. We don't think of us as like missionaries. I don't think of us as like Moseses. We're just whatever. It's cool to think God has prepared everyone in this group to a certain point to say, okay, now I want you to go to Zimbabwe for a few days. Now, you can go next year, so maybe he's preparing you already for that. Who knows? We'll talk about that later. But not today, but in the future. It's so neat. We have people that are going to be teaching Bible lessons. We have people that are going to be preparing snacks and playing games with the kids and building relationships and singing songs and leading music. And three of us are doing sermons. You'll actually get to hear them here before we go. We're going to hand out tomatoes that day, and you do with them what you want. But we're actually going to do some street evangelism where we're going to walk up and down the street. We're close to a marketplace there where we're just going to walk around and say, hey, do you know about Jesus? We don't do that here generally, at all. That's kind of intimidating, but I think, who knows, the experiences that we've had in our life that God has led us to that moment, that there might be one person there that he's going to use this team to reach, or one family, or one neighborhood. Who knows what he's going to do? I don't know what God has planned for that trip, but he's been working in our lives, preparing us for a number of years for this. Now, on this side of the planet, we have our own vacation Bible school coming up in just a few weeks. And a lot of the same things are going to be happening. Classes are going to be taught, crafts are going to be put together, snacks will be made, songs will be sung. There's all kinds of planning and thought and action that's going to go into this thing. And there are kids in this neighborhood that are going to hopefully hear about Jesus because of that. We are missionaries right here. God has something planned for somebody. Why? Just because you're a part of this group and we're doing this. I don't know how he manages things. But God's been working in your life to prepare you for this moment that's coming up in just a few weeks, right here in this very room where we'll be talking to people about Jesus. Maybe he's preparing you to do more. Maybe he's been preparing you to teach a lesson, to teach a Sunday school class, to lead a small group here at Pathway. Maybe he's preparing you to lead someone to Christ who you work with, and just he's preparing you to start that conversation. Maybe he sent you here just to learn who he is, to connect with him on a more personal basis. I don't know, whatever it is, I do believe God has a purpose in mind. That these aren't accidents, these aren't mistakes. This collection today, this Sunday, is not an accident. He's training you for something, preparing you for something. Everything that happens in your life, he's preparing you for something. Well, while God is preparing Moses through daily interacting with his sheep and becoming a shepherd, the people back in Egypt are having a really hard time. They don't know what's going on, but if they knew, they'd be like, Moses, would you learn your lesson quicker, please? This is let's get this thing rolling. But back in Exodus 2, verse 23, he says, during those many days, the king of Egypt died, and the people of Israel groaned because of their slavery, and they cried out for help. Their cry for rescue from slavery came up to God, and God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob, and God saw the people of Israel, and God knew. He says, I got a plan. Don't worry. I've been working with the guy. He's going to lead you out of there. And it's at this point that God gives Moses this giant test of faith. It's like, let's go back to your original plan, but this time let's include me. is really what's going on here. One day Moses looks up and he sees a bush that's on fire, but it's not burning, and that'd be kind of odd and weird. He says, I got to check this out, what's going on? And he goes to check it out. He approaches the bush, and God speaks to him at this time, take off your sandals. This is holy ground. I am here, so take, this is holy. Treat this as a special moment. And he tells Moses, I'm the God of your father Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. So he's tying together the genealogy, saying, this is a big moment, Moses. This is huge. I haven't talked to anybody like this for several generations, and now it's time. And in Exodus chapter 3, verse 7, it says, the Lord said, I've surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt. I've heard their cry because of their taskmasters. I know their sufferings, and I've come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up out of that land to a good and broad land, a land flowing with milk and honey, to a place of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites. And now, behold, the cry of the people of Israel has come to me, and I have also seen the oppression with which the Egyptians oppress them. And Moses is thinking, yeah, I tried that once. I hope you find somebody. This is going to be great. And then he says the next sentence, come, I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. And then Moses had a shift in his life. Before, he was ready to do it on his own. I'll just kill this guy, I'll take that guy. And this next statement is like, you don't understand, God, I'm a shepherd. I'm just a shepherd. I can't go to Pharaoh, that's a dominant country in the world, dominant leader. I can't just go to the most powerful man on the planet and say, I'm releasing you of your workforce. It doesn't work that way. And God says, no, you don't understand. I'm going to use you to lead my people out of Egypt. And Moses is like, I don't think it's going to work. I've tried it. It's not going to work. I'm a big zero. That's what he's telling God. And God says, no, you don't understand. If I'm in it, it's going to work. I mean, it's already done. I'm just waiting for you to go through the motions here. And the conversation keeps going back. And obviously, I'm abbreviating it quite a bit. And finally, Moses just says, God, just find somebody else. Honestly, I'm a shepherd. Let me go back to my sheep. And in Exodus 4, it says, the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses. I hope that's never said with my name inserted. Whoa. The anger of the Lord is kindled against Moses. And he said, is there not Aaron, your brother? Like, dude, you keep making your excuses. I've got an answer for everything. I say, is there not Aaron, your brother, the Levite? I know that he can speak well. Behold, he's coming and out to meet you. When he sees you, he'll be glad in his heart. You'll speak with him and put the words in his mouth, and I will be with your mouth and with his mouth, and will teach you both what to do. Don't worry, I have a plan. You don't have a plan. You just go. I'll tell you what to know when you need to know it on a need-to-know basis, right? Just go. Go in faith, what he's saying, basically. He shall speak for you, verse 16, to the people. He shall be your mouth, and you shall be as God to him, and take in your hand the staff which you shall do the signs. Let me just give you a hint. This is free advice right here. You can take it or leave it, but I suggest you take this. If God puts something in your heart, he really puts it on your heart. Like beyond a shadow of a doubt, God says, do this, all right? I'm not just like, I'm thinking about doing it. But God just blaze it on you. Maybe he appears in a burning bush or something. I don't know. But if he somehow tells you, this is what I want you to do, don't argue with him, right? Just do it. Just do it. Let him worry about the details. Let him figure out how it's going to happen. You might be thinking, man, it's way big. I can't possibly teach that class, or I can't possibly work in the nursery. Whatever it is that seems big to you. He's like, are you serious? I took a shepherd and look what I did with a shepherd named Moses. He'll just don't say no to God ever. God tests Moses' faith. He almost fails because he's still in zero mode at this point, years after his mistake. But in faith, he decides, okay, I'm going to do this. God's not going to let me off the hook. And he goes back to Egypt, and he tells the Israelite God is sending them home. So now it's a big faith moment. Moses plus faith equals hero. So he goes from zero to hero, and the only difference is now he's interjected faith. Now we're going to let God do God's part, and I'll just do my part. That's all I can worry about is what I got to offer. I'm just shepherd boy now, but I'll do it, whatever you say, and God's going to take the rest. In chapter 5, we're going to breeze through this. There's so many chapters, we're not going to read this. But in chapter 5, Moses goes to Pharaoh and says, let my people go. Pharaoh's like, no. They have a lot of value to me. I think I'll go ahead and keep them. And in a series of conversations that take place, God introduces himself to Pharaoh through a series of plagues. There's a number of plagues that now come on the land. And each one, they're not like just random plagues. Each one is actually an assault against the gods of Egypt, where they think they're powerful, they have these great gods. Jehovah God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, shows up and says, oh, you say you have this cute little God of the rivers. Let me show you how I control the rivers. He takes every single one of the Egyptian gods and slices them down and says they are worthless compared to me. So in chapter 7, all of the water is turned to blood and all of the fish die. You ever walked along a lake where just one fish had been there for a couple, 3 days? I can smell it like several feet away. I grew up in elementary years around Clear Lake, and it'd be like, ugh, and I could smell it, and then I'd see it. Oh, there. Imagine all the fish, all of them, dead, washed ashore, rotting. That had to be pleasant. Do you ever smell the packing house on a nice humid day? You're like, ugh. Okay. Just imagine the great outdoors full of rotting, decaying fish. This wasn't besides the fact you have no water. That's a pretty big thing, too. I mean, that's a big deal. But I'm just thinking it's just an unpleasant thing. In chapter 8, God sends frogs everywhere. They're in their homes, they're in people's beds, they're in their dishes. I mean, everywhere they go, there are frogs. The Pharaoh finally says to Moses, would you just please pray and have your God get rid of the frogs? So he does, and they die. And now you have piles of frogs decaying. So, I don't know if the fish are even cleaned up yet. You got piles of decaying frogs fills the land. The dust of the air becomes like gnats, and it's just how nasty that can be. Have you ever ridden your bike through a thing of gnats? Okay, gnats everywhere. You breathe and you're like, oh, you can't. I mean, you can't even open your mouth. You're in your eyes. It's really gross. Next, after that, there are flies that cover everything, but they seem to leave the Jews alone. That's really, really weird. Next, the Egyptian livestock is dying. Next, boils appear all over the people and animals that were saved in the first or the previous plague. Then there's this huge hailstorm that just causes major damage, worst ever in the history of Egypt. Major destruction to crops and property and animals and so forth. In chapter 10, locusts come and eat everything that the hail left behind. So basically, the land is barren. Their entire economic structure is collapsed. The animals are gone. The fish are gone. Crops are gone. I mean, everything. All they have left now are the slaves. Then there's a darkness, a plague of darkness that lasts for 3 days. A darkness that the Bible says could be felt. Have you ever been in a room that is so dark there's literally no light and it just feels? I mean, it's not just you can't see, but it's like feels heavy and dark. That's what it was throughout the whole area. Finally, the last plague comes, and the firstborn child of every Egyptian, and anyone who doesn't have the doorpost marked with the blood of a lamb, is killed. Even animals that are left, the firstborn, will die. It's in Exodus chapter 12, verse 29. At midnight, the Lord struck down all the firstborn of the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sat on the throne to the firstborn of the captive who was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of the livestock. And Pharaoh rose up in the night, he and all his servants and all the Egyptians, and there was a great cry in Egypt, for there was not a house where someone was not dead. Total devastation. God says, no, really, let my people go. Really. Moses couldn't have done that. Moses took out one guy. Moses tried to stop an argument. But now, in faith, Moses comes and says, I represent the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He wants his people free. God can do so much more. Verse 31, he summoned Moses, Aaron by the night, and said, go out from among my people, both of you, and the people of Israel, and go, serve the Lord as you've said. Take your flocks, your herds, as you've said. Be gone, and bless me also. Can we go back? Can you just get out of my life and bless me too? I'm having a rough time. Everything's devastated. Now, we just flew through an awful lot of misery just in a few moments there, and a lot of heart-changing that was going on, from the whole nation saying, hey, I'm not going to give up my slaves, to please leave. and let me give you some cash to go. Ended up taking gold and all kinds of stuff with him. Please leave. Ultimately, Pharaoh lets the people go, changes his mind, sends his soldiers after them. The people are pinned against the river in an army, and God has them cross, as you know, the story of the waters separating the Israelites go through. The Egyptian army comes in after them. The waters come back. The army is now wiped out, too. God's like, no, really, said I'm taking my people. Stop it. Stop it, Pharaoh. I win. I'm God. I just win. Here's, I think, the lesson for us. Like I say, we may not be a Moses. You know, we always try to be the guy, the hero in the story. Like, oh, I'm the Moses, I'm the David, you know, I'm the whatever. It's like, no, I'm just the dude. I'm just a guy, right? I'm just me. You're just you. I don't know what God has for you. I don't know what his assignment is for you. But here's the deal. When God gives you an assignment, he will always provide what you need to accomplish it. You know, maybe your assignment is to lead a small group. I can't lead a small group. I don't know what to say. You know what? Really? You don't think he can handle that? He just took down the Egyptian nation because one guy had faith. You don't have faith to lead a small group? I bet you do. I bet you do. Just be confident. He'll give you what you need. He'll give you the tools. He's the same God. He's not diluted over the years. He's not shy. He's not scared. You might be. I might be. But he's not. We're going to be walking through Zimbabwe talking to strangers about Jesus. I'm like, I don't know. But then I go, you know what? If you can take the Israelites out of Egypt, you can use me. I'll just talk. I'll let him figure out what to say, what happens. I can't teach that class. I can't help. I can't. Really? Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. I don't know what God has for you. If God gives you something, he's laying something on your heart, you should be doing something, then do it. Don't fight him on it. He always provides. Our job is to just, in faith, obey, move forward with what he says to do. Yeah, Moses did have incredible faith. He went from 0 to hero. I don't know where you are right now, 0 or hero. You're all too humble to say hero probably, but yeah, I mean, if you're going in faith, just go in faith. Just don't be a 0. You know, don't do it on your own power. Let God move in you and through you. Whatever it is he's called you to do, it's the same God. Let's pray.